New to Formula One?
Or just as obsessed as we are?
Welcome back to another episode of Formation Lab,
where we teach you all the dirty details that you need to know to be the best Formula One fan that you can be.
You are live with the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week. And this week, we are diving into the changes for the 2022 season. Specifically, we're going to look at the car design and the budget regulation changes. Ultimately, all of these changes were designed to make the sport more competitive and thus more interesting for us fans. And honestly, after the season we've had so far, I don't know how that's going to be possible.
Yeah, I got nothing for you.
We've seen diversity in podium winners, the most since 2012. We've seen a true title fight between Max and Lewis. We have Ferrari and McLaren in the battle for third, and we still have 7 more races for the drama to unfold.
Let's start with the new car. It's really easy to get bogged down in all the technical terms. Katie and I both experienced that in all of our research. We are ultimately not mechanical engineers, and we don't even pretend to be them. Not at all. Also, we don't expect any of you to be mechanical engineers or want to be mechanical engineers in the future. That being said, we think it's super important to understand how the changes to the car will impact the races next season. At this point, crazy, I'm going to suggest something outside the box here. If you are a visual learner or just prefer to have an image of what we're about to discuss, then I say pause right now. Pause us. Yes, I am telling you to pause. Head to Formula One's YouTube and watch that video, everything you need to know about the 2022 F1 car. If you Google F1 2022 car, it will pop up as well. But for both of us, it definitely helped to have a visual before putting all of the words together to kind of fully understand the picture.
And welcome back, LOL. If you listened to our suggestion, go you. If not, look up the video later. But before we dive in, I want to address some key terms that we should and almost have to define. So the first one is downforce, which is the aerodynamic force that is applied in a downwards direction as the car travels forwards. This is then harnessed to improve a car's traction and its handling through the corners. Then we have dirty air, which is as air passes over an F1 car's surface, it produces a wake of turbulent air that hampers the aerodynamic flow of the cars directly behind it. This wake that is created is nicknamed dirty air.
Now that we have some key terms, let's get to the car. We have known that this change is coming for a bit now. Formula One started working on the car in 2017, with the changes expected to go into effect in 2021. But just like so much in our lives, they were postponed due to COVID-19 until 2022. Now we're finally here, and we're intrigued, to say the least. Things that will not change, though, are DRS and the 1.6-liter turbo hybrid power unit. There will be more standard components and sensors that the FAA can monitor, but ultimately both of those components aren't going to see major changes. The new car was developed by F1's in-house motorsport team with the FIA, with a focus on a different method to produce downforce effect called ground effect. Ground effect is a series of aerodynamic effects or designs which helps in creating the favorable amount of downforce in a car, allowing for greater grip and greater cornering speeds. Ground effect was previously used and banned in Formula One in the early 1980s, when all cars went to being required to have a flat floor. Why was it banned? Well, extreme ground effect is incredibly dangerous and risky. If the effect, that extreme downforce, is broken abruptly, if the bottom skirt of the car is damaged, if the car goes over an uneven portion of the road, if the car is nudged by another car, etc., then a large portion of the downforce would be almost instantaneously lost, potentially causing the car to hurtle off the track. Teams in the late 1970s and early 1980s were obsessed with the effects of ground effect. They were pushing the boundaries of what was safe at a time when we didn't have a halo. That push for using or generating as much ground effect as possible was genuinely just pushing the boundaries beyond what was acceptable for driver safety. Soon, the FAA got involved like they always do and banned the system. However, it is set to return next year, but with the increased safety measures, additional restrictions to ensure safety, and ultimately the budget cap to prevent that extreme obsession and innovation towards maximizing ground effect. Overall, the massive goal, the reason for all of these changes, is focusing on creating closer racing by making changes that allow for increased overtakes, increased battles, increased clashing wheel to wheel, increased drama on track. And ultimately, that's to give us fans a greater experience, more excitement, races that we see engaging from the beginning to the end.
And before we dive into the changes, let's look at the main problems with the current car. So currently, the cars create catastrophic downforce loss. And the purpose of downforce is to keep the fast-moving vehicle adhere to the surface of the track, creating more grip. In the current car, the downforce loss happens when a car is chasing the leading car in an attempt to overtake. As the leading car pierces a hole in the air, they leave the dirty air wake behind them, which means it's hard for that chasing car to stay close, or in layman's terms, to be able to follow and overtake. For us non-engineers, we like to think of it as the wake in a swimming pool when swimming laps. So the dirty air is the wake that you would experience as a novice swimmer behind the greats of Michael Phelps. It's impossible to follow him.
I drowned. So, additionally, the car will feature a new floor. We're moving away from that flat floor. You won't be able to see it, but it will be working overtime to help create that very important downforce. The floor of the new car will feature fully shaped underfloor tunnels with a floor edge ring that is sealed. It's much different from the 2021 car where the floor was flat and unsealed. They were called flat bottom racing cars.
Fat bottom girls.
These are flat bottom though, not fat. The tunnels will direct the airflow and generate a large amount of efficient downforce. It will create less wake and be less impacted by wake. So it's going to reduce the cause and the effect of why it's difficult to follow or chase. So double whammy there. This change, along with getting rid of barge boards, which are components that direct airflow and make the car more aerodynamic, unless they're closely following another car, is where we see the massive drop-off in performance occur. With the new floor tunnel system, catastrophic loss of downforce will just not occur at the same rate. Currently, the 2021 car at 10 meters experiences a 46% loss of downforce. With the new changes, we will only see an 18% loss at that short of a distance.
Yeah, which is basically nothing.
Basically nothing compared to what they're currently experiencing.
Let's move on to the wheels, because the wheels are getting an upgrade. We are going to see 18-inch wheels. Currently, they're 13 inches. They are lower profile tires that create benefits in the handling of the tires themselves. So lower profile tires provide increased grip and better wheel response, leading to a quicker and more efficient tire. The move to the larger tires is to prevent the overheating of them when they slide, which causes degradation and tire failure. Additionally, the change will cut down on the amount of sidewall, or side of the tire for those who don't know, which has previously caused suspension issues for teams to sort out. In terms of driving, the larger tires will result in a need for a change in driving style as they will allow for more direct turning. With the larger and lower profile tires, drivers will have a more immediate steering or faster reaction in the movement of the steering wheel to the reaction of the tires. So think about when you're on the highway and you turn the wheel to avoid something. There's a delay in the tire response, so you have to be proactive. The new tires will allow for almost immediate reaction from the tires, requiring the drivers to reassess when they need to turn the wheel. Additionally, there will be two notable new additions to the wheels, one for the first time and one that was last seen in 2009. For the first time, F1 cars will feature over-wheel winglets, these cute little wingy arms.
Tabs.
And the goal of the over-wing winglets is to control the wake coming off the front tires and deflect it away from the rear tires, which will increase resilience in close racing. We will also see the return of wheel covers. They were previously banned in 2009 due to their design being more of a hindrance. In 2009, F1 did have a redesign in mind to make them more helpful towards overtaking, but with teams looking to limit spending with a new car redesign, they decided to scrap them for the 2010 season. More than a decade later, they are returning as a part of the overall redesign of the wheels to reduce wake turbulence, plus bring a more luxurious / extravagant look to the car. Not sure I agree with the latter, but we can circle back next season.
In terms of look, more extravagant look, the front and rear wing are new. They give a more extravagant or spaceshipy feel that I think they exist. The newly designed front wing is much simpler. The goal is to generate consistent downforce and control the front wheel wake to prevent it from being sent dramatically outwards or under the floor, which is what's occurring now. This should allow for closer racing by reducing the impact of the turbulent air coming off the leading car. The front wing of the chasing car will better direct the air off the leading car and prevent it from causing a loss of downforce, which again is the ability of the car to stay glued to the track for grip. The rear wing will feature rolled tips and a steeper diffuser ramp. The goal of these changes is to throw the dirty air out but higher up than it's currently coming off the leading car. The disrupted air will come off the rear wing and create a mushroom-shaped wake that will be thrown higher into the air. This will allow for closer racing by reducing the amount of dirty air that the chasing car needs to drive through. Less dirty air means it will take less energy to be able to follow, stay in the attack, and thus overtake. Again, we will still have DRS, but they're going to use the new design to study with DRS and to evaluate how the new changes together change the type of close racing we're allowed to have. Most drivers have commented that the new car doesn't exactly look like a Formula One car. I totally agree with that. Lando Norris recently commented that the new car looks uncomfortable to drive and learning it's going to be uncomfortable, and it will take a learning curve. But ultimately, I think, when the last redesign of the car with the addition of the halo, it felt and looked uncomfortable. I think it's just going to, again, be a learning curve for the drivers, but also for fans watching, because it does have a spaceshipy feel. Don't you agree?
I would agree. And I think it's important to note this because the complete removal of the front wing was assessed and they ultimately decided against it. And thank God for that, because I simply could not imagine a Formula One car without a front wing. Yes, they do get damaged quite often and it leads to longer pit stops, but it is essential to the look, style, aesthetic of a Formula One car. And they have tested this new car to the max. The car has been put through 7,500 plus simulations. Literally 10 million four-drawer cabinets full of text documents of data. So it's safe to say they've done their research, but we are so intrigued to see how that's going to translate on track. 2021 has seen so much excitement even at tracks that have been very predictable in the past. So it'll be exciting to see what the car will be able to do and which drivers will benefit from it. So what are our predictions? I think Megan and I both can agree that the back of the grid should be able to capitalize, particularly for teams like Haas, which has focused all of their efforts this year on looking ahead to the 2022 season. They are not spending any money on the 2021 car, hence why they are always in the back and often more than a lap behind.
Additionally, I think we could probably both agree on this one. Next year's kind of make or break for Ferrari, in my opinion. Our opinion, I guess. We might see a little preview of their innovations this year, not so much for the new car look, but specifically around innovating their engine. We really will have to wait and see what they bring to the fight for the third place. I would love to see there not really be a fight for third, but instead be more of a fight for the top four.
We could see Red Bull, Mercedes, obviously. Would love to see McLaren and Ferrari battling for 1, 2, 3s all year long.
It'd be interesting to see it not so much a 1-2 battle and a 3-4 battle, but more like a 1-2-3-4 battle. Like a general swapping of who's on the podiums and kind of some questions on who's ultimately going to win the constructor.
Yeah, I want there to be some mystery this coming year.
I think ultimately we know who's going to end up winning the constructors. I can't imagine it's not going to be Mercedes, even though we're seeing Red Bull, Max Verstappen so successful yet. We have no idea who's going to win the title at all. Genuinely, we don't know.
It could be either of them.
It could be either of them. But I would prefer for both championships to be a little bit more questioned next year. I think they're going to be.
I would agree. And I think part of that is Red Bull may struggle because Red Bull has been 1,000% focused on this 2021 title fight and haven't really spoken out much about their plans for next year other than Honda leaving them.
I mean, we're not saying, I think I need to clarify here that neither of us are saying that Red Bull's going to be at the back of the grid.
Yeah.
No. I think they're going to struggle to bring the fight for first. I also think Mercedes might struggle, but ultimately they're both going to be strong.
Yeah.
And Mercedes will most likely be fighting for 1-2. That's still not a surprise.
I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most is this next year not only starts a new era of cars, but it is also going to be the year where the cars are the most similar. So it may come down more to driver skill. Who's able to adapt to these cars faster? Who's able to alter their driving style? Who's going to come out on top?
It's also going to be the team that can innovate on a budget.
And speaking of budgets.
Oh wait, we're not there yet.
Okay, yeah. 2 elements that have been hotly discussed this season are sustainability and safety.
So in terms of sustainability, like I said earlier, the power unit will remain the same. It will be the same 1.6 liter turbo hybrid unit, which is the most efficient and advanced engine on the planet. I'm going to go ahead and say that and put a period after it. In 2021, it was required that all fuel be 5.75% biocomponents. Next year, the fuel will be required to be 10% ethanol. It will be called E10. Very, very tricky here to know what that is. E for ethanol, 10 for 10%. Additionally, the ethanol must be second-gen biofuels and made in a sustainable way where it produces a near zero carbon footprint. The F1's Chief Technical Officer, Pat Simmons, said that this requirement is ultimately an interim step in the movement to make the entire sport more sustainable. I am going to say I wholly 100% move and support this move and this interim step. I would like to see it more rapidly. I understand we can't do that, but I do support that sustainability is becoming a focus, specifically that we are pushing and forcing the fuel to be more sustainable. I think that not only benefits F1, but it benefits all, car racing and forming hybrid engines in general. I think ultimately I'm kind of stumbling over my words here because I'm kind of impressed and awe-shocked that they're doing this a touch, but I think that this might be able to translate to something that is ultimately bigger than Formula One. Yeah.
Definitely. And in terms of safety, I've got a couple points to make. One, and the most important one I think, is that the halo stays. There was some debate that was not going to be a thing, but I think we will see the halo until we see the next innovation around protecting the driver's head. Think about the Hamilton-Verstappen debacle in Monza. That was another incident where we saw the halo save a driver's life. So that is here to stay. The chassis has been designed to absorb more energy in a front and rear crash to protect the driver. So 48% more energy in front impacts and 15% more energy absorbed in rear impacts. Additionally, thanks to the incident with Romain Grosjean in Bahrain 2020, where he was going 120 miles into the metal barrier and then had to escape from the flames, we will see the power unit and the chassis that are designed to separate without exposing the fuel tank. So we hopefully won't see tragedy and fire. And then finally, there will be a longer nose section and stronger chassis sides. This will prevent accidents like Antoine Hubert's, who tragically died after he crashed into the tire barrier on the right side of the track and was deflected sideways into the path of Juan Manuel Correa, who struck the left side of Hubert's car. As we all know, this is a very dangerous sport that has to take proper safety measures in order to keep these drivers alive and keep them driving. Without these safety measures, I think we would be seeing a lot more deaths like we did in the past, and it doesn't have to be as deadly as it was thanks to all of these innovations that they've made.
I think ultimately both of us would say that we're pretty proud of F1 for taking, steps toward increased sustainability and safety. I think I'd like to caveat that by saying there is a lot more that we could be doing for sustainability. I'm not saying that we have done enough, but I am proud of at least some steps in the right direction. I don't know if we see that from other sports like we have from Formula One.
Not any that I can think of, really.
Exactly.
Our resident curmudgeon, Gunther Steiner, had a moment of pure optimism about the 2022 season. With both a new car and budget regulations, the sport may allow for smaller teams to be more competitive. Steiner so passionately said it's not a dream anymore when referring to Haas's potential ability to succeed. So in the words of our mother, let's talk about our budget. In 2021, we saw the first budget reduction, but to fully understand Formula One's financial disparities, we need to take a look at the budget's pre-pandemic and pre-budget considerations. So in 2018, a long time ago, we see the greatest disparity. We've got a couple clubs that we've nominated. We have the 400 plus million and the 1,000 plus employees club. You can probably guess who these people are. Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. Then we have the 200 to 300 million dollar club, less prestigious but still ridiculous, where we have Renault, now known as Alpine, and McLaren. And finally, we have the Ballin' on a Budget club at about 100 million to 200 million. We've got Racing Point, now known as Aston Martin, Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Toro Rosso, now known as AlphaTauri. And then we've got the penny-pinching team with the smallest budget, Williams. So when you think about spending versus performance, the teams that spend more perform better. It's as simple as that. More money, better car. And it is phenomenal that Mercedes has won 7 Constructors' Championships in a row, but it's also boring. And it's time to give the smaller, underfunded, in comparison teams a chance to fight for the title. I mean, look at this season so far. We hit the budget cap of 140 million, and we've already had a more interesting race season.
So let's talk about these specific caps. This year, 2021, the budget was capped at 145 million. Next year, in 2022, the budget will be capped at 140 million. 2023, the budget is capped at 135 million. And then 2024 and beyond, they're going to reevaluate essentially to determine what the budget needs to be. Truthfully, I think this kind of goes without saying. The greatest impact is going to happen for teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. They are genuinely just going to need to shift their focus to finding ways to maximize performance on a budget, when they previously had literally never had to. They've had the resources, virtually unlimited ones, that would allow for all the innovation they could possibly even imagine. That will not be the case going forward, as opposed to the teams that know the struggle of balling on a budget. Otmar Schaffnauer, CEO of Aston Martin Cognizant, stated, "There are years where we had 5 million, 6 million, and I'm sure the others had hundreds of millions of discretionary spending on car improvement." Otmar is giving us a genuine view into the fact that it can be done. You can innovate on a budget. I think hearing that a team has to go from 400 million to 145 might seem drastic, but Schaffnauer is proving that every day, teams with lower budgets make it happen. They still are innovating and they still are performing well. So it is possible to do this on a budget. However, it will force the big spenders, our big three, our 400 plus million club, to make the really hard decisions on what to spend. And ultimately, I think we will just naturally see a leveling of the playing field, which will, in conjunction with the car changes, drive that competition that people are craving.
And just like everything in the world of finance, there's always a loophole. And this one seems particularly suspicious. The cap only covers performance-related expenses. So additional money, not in the cap, can be spent on marketing, driver fees, wages of the top 3 personnel, employee bonuses, champion entry fees, engine supply deals, travel and hotels, super license purchases, and non-F1 activities. Will all the exemptions lead to teams exploiting those loopholes?
Duh.
We will have to see how closely this is monitored and if penalties will be handed out to the constructors on the grid who may choose to find a loophole.
So why is this happening now? And really, why is it significant now? I think ultimately it makes the sport more accessible, with constructors and sponsors not feeling a burden of trying to compete with the big dogs. Additionally, I think it protects pushing out those smaller teams. We don't want to see any less than 10 teams. I don't think we want to see another team have to leave because they go into administration, which is bankruptcy for the British people. And on a more global kind of like sustainable thought, I think that this movement is somewhat cognizant of the world we're going into potentially and hopefully post-pandemic. Naturally, budgets will have to be tighter for teams because none of these businesses outside of Formula One, I mean, even in Formula One, have been being run on a quote unquote normal basis. We're still basically not at real full attendance yet. And we're also just not back at, the same level of spending pre-pandemic. So I think that, forcing this to happen next year and really this year under the pandemic world is, kind of generally kind of globally intelligent in the fact that we should probably care about how much money is being spent on things like this.
And very well received by everyone.
Yeah, I really don't think, other than, the pushback on, how drastic at first, I think ultimately the big dogs, our top club, is kind of come around to it. They're going to struggle. They might use those loopholes, but
we'll just have to wait and see.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.